The last month has been a really terrible time for losses in the field of metal. First, we lost Slipknot's former drummer, Joey Jordison, and then Metal Church's current singer, Mike Howe. And now we've lost Trouble frontman, Eric Wagner. It's a lot to get your head around, isn't it? Yeah. And we only found out about Eric this week, and so that's still particularly fresh. And I just wanted to make a video in which I talk about the albums that Eric was involved with that I love in the band Trouble, and in particular one album that I think is Eric's and the band's finest hour. But I will of course want to hear your opinions on that, and so let's talk about what made Eric and the band Trouble so great. The first Trouble album I ever bought and listened to was this one. Yeah, Run to the Light. I bought this second hand in 1987, which is the year it came out, so that was pretty good going. I wasn't sure what to expect from it, because of course these were before the days when you could just pull out your phone and do a quick Google and make sure it was the type of music you're into. You know, the cover was quite nondescript, as you can see there. What does that mean, Run to the Light? And you know, I think it kind of reassured me that the logo had a pretty metallic font about it, and the song titles sort of looked, sort of sounded pretty metal. You know what? I miss those days, you know, and I still do this. I still like to do this, where you would pick up a record in a record shop and buy it just based on the title and the cover and the song titles and take a chance. I mean, obviously, you know, we can't all afford to do that these days very often. But it is kind of fun when you get a record home without knowing what it really is, and it turns out to be great. And this record I really liked. I don't think I fully loved it back then. I think I probably appreciate it more now, actually. The first side is especially good, with The Misery Shows. Thinking of the Past is a really good song. On Borrowed Time. And of course this was the first time I ever heard Eric Wagner's voice. And so that means that I first heard him singing on the opening track on this album, The Misery Shows, and with the opening line, I told you that bastards will pay. And of course he's kind of shrieking this in his absolutely unique tone. I don't think there's another singer on earth who sounded like Eric Wagner did. It's just an absolutely special voice that man had. So that was 1987, and I'd found this album, and I think eventually I figured out that the band had released albums before this. First album was called Psalm 9, and then the follow-up album was The Skull. This is a CD that combines both, and this came out on Metal Blade Records, distributed by Music for Nations over here in the UK. And these albums are great. I mean, they're really heavy. They're the heaviest, well, in a way, they're the heaviest Trouble have been. I mean, I really like it. It's they've got songs, classics, Trouble songs on here, like The Tempter and Assassin, and of course the original song Bastards Will Pay that Eric was referring to in the opening track of Run to the Light, 2 albums later. This release actually has both records on the one disc, which is fine, I guess, because unlike vinyl, CDs don't get compressed when you cram a load of stuff onto them. Now, on the subject of those first 2 albums, those very skull-crushing first 2 albums, Hammerheart Records have released in the last year or so these reissues of the 2 albums, and they're absolutely lovely. They're kind of, the covers are kind of lenticular on these re-releases. Very nice indeed. Very nice indeed. Yeah. And you can see the backs there, kind of shiny. Yeah, and Hammerheart have released several Trouble albums, which is great for me because they've reissued what is my favourite Trouble album, the album that I was talking about at the start of this video. And this album came out on Deaf American in 1990, produced by Rick Rubin, and it kind of did okay, but ultimately it kind of sank without trace. And you could tell it had sunk without trace because it was really hard to get hold of. Copies of it, you know, copies of that first pressing, the vinyl, I haven't managed to get one. Oh, well, I could probably get one, but I can't afford it. I did manage to find a CD at one point. So this album is simply entitled Trouble. And it makes sense that it's called Trouble, because I think as I said recently on another video, when bands self-name their albums, oh, I said that on the Halloween video, yeah, when bands self-title their albums, it's kind of a statement of confidence in the album, don't you think? Yeah. Now, we can see Eric Wagner there. There he is, among the lads. Yeah. And this album is just absolutely fantastic. Here is the Hammerheart Records reissue. Absolutely lovely. It's got a nice little sticker at the top there. I've still got the shrink on this one. I have, of course, been playing the album. In fact, it's on the turntable now. So why is this the best Trouble album, in my opinion, and Eric Wagner's finest hour? If there was a Venn diagram between Trouble's innate heaviness and kind of accessibility, then this album is right in the middle of that Venn diagram, I guess, but not in a bad way, not in a selling out type of way at all. I mean, to be honest, the production on this album is so good and the guitar sound is so immense that in a way this album is heavier than the first album, I think. I mean, listen to the opening riff, or the main riff of Psychotic Reaction. That is absolutely nuts. And the album is just full of great songs. It's full of great songs. It starts with At the End of My Days, moves on to The Wolf, which might be the greatest song on the album, possibly, hard to say. I really love Psychotic Reaction as well. And then there's A Sinner's Fame, which is a slightly more laid-back track. And then you've got The Misery Shows Act 2, which I think follows on from Run to the Light. R.I.P. is a really heavy song. Love that. Black Shapes of Doom is as heavy as the title suggests. And then Heaven on My Mind is another really great heavy chugging song. And then you have END, another acronym, and END is really heavy as well. And then there's a song that seems to be a lot of people's favourite, All Is Forgiven. And I can kind of see why, because it's kind of like a slower, more reflective track. But it's kind of lovely and weirdly kind of affecting. Yeah, interesting. It's kind of about, I suppose, everything being forgiven at the end of your days, funnily enough. Yeah. Ultimately, I think the greatest testament to how good this album is that it's just not the kind of stuff that I'm normally into. There's a lot of retro rock on this. There's a lot of 60s and 70s influence and psychedelia, and that's not my type of thing at all. I have no interest in that stuff. But when Trouble play that stuff, I do. I suppose because they were playing it in their own way with guitars the size of the moon. It's kind of like, it was almost like, you know, 60s and 70s psychedelia played with Metallica-sized guitars, you know, and just the riffing style of the guitarists in this band is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's really unique as well, you know, that riffing style plus Eric Wagner's incredible kind of atmospheric voice was absolutely a recipe for magic. And I urge you, if you haven't got this album, maybe check it out on Spotify or Amazon Music first, and then pick this album up from Hammerheart Records, and I don't think you'll regret it. Trouble, of course, went on to make other albums beyond that 1990 album. Manic Frustration is a favourite of many. It goes a bit too far into that 60s, 70s psychedelia for me, but I know a lot of people love it. I still enjoy it. I also liked a lot of Plastic Green Head, the next album, especially that track, The Eye. Whoa, that riff on that is kind of like their Trouble's answer to Sad But True. Eric Wagner, rest in peace. Thank you for all the fantastic music. And I'd love to see you, the viewer, down here in comments so that we can talk about Eric and his legacy and Trouble's legacy, and if you want we can have a good-natured discussion about what Eric Wagner's finest hour was and Trouble's finest hour, and we'll have a lovely chat about it. Thank you so much, and all that remains to say in this particular video is metal.